Well, thank you for having me down and to speak to you. Can everyone hear okay at the back as well from here? Super. It is funny coming in here and feeling at home, even though it was so many years ago that I was sort of sitting where you guys are now, and thankfully it's great memories as well. So for me, I wanted to come here today and tell you a bit of my story so you can hopefully craft your own. And I think it's really interesting with what Tang has just said there as well, that there's a lot of different pathways that you can go through, but the one for you won't be the same one that it is for any of us, but just know that there are a lot of opportunities there and that you're in a fantastic course with some amazing knowledge that you'll get out of it as well. So keep that in mind with all the talks that we go through. So my pathway, as Kate had said, I graduated in 2009. When I first got into the course, I was really keen on physio and osteopathy, and when I read through what both courses involved and the philosophies behind what they are, I decided that osteopathy was what I was keen to go for. And in my first year, to be honest, I found it pretty tough. I was playing football in my first semester and had my arm broken quite badly and really struggled through kind of painkillers and trying to understand all the anatomy that we were learning in a pretty short space of time through the first exam period. And I've got to say, after that first semester, I honestly questioned whether I was up to doing the course. But stuck at it, and yeah, certainly didn't look back, as hopefully you'll see with what's eventuated, which is probably a bit different from some of the other pathways that people go through. So no doubt it's absolutely challenging, but if you approach it with passion, you're always going to go very well. So my pathway, I've done a fancy little PowerPoint thing here where these all flew in differently, so that's your loss that you don't get to see that, unfortunately, with this as it is now. But basically, same course as you guys, graduated in 2009, but through that last year of university, I did an internship at the Sports and Spinal Clinic in Beaumaris, which was invaluable. So I'd recommend for all of you to go out and see clinics and get involved with practitioners that are out there now who generously give their time. That for me was an amazing experience, where I came from the clinic at the uni, which is a uni clinic, to proper professional clinic, where you see really every day what you're going to be facing in terms of a treatment model and getting some great mentoring as well. So I couldn't recommend that enough. In my last year of university, I was lucky enough to be lectured by, I think, one of the guys who you'll hear a video from in Paul Francis, who was a national team rower and was interested in starting a sports innovation company. And at that time had got some funding from an ex-AFL player that he was friends with, and I subsequently became friends with. And we decided to start applying the thought process behind osteopathy into elite sport. And originally it was looking at hamstring injuries or any other areas that we saw sports that we were interested in were struggling to solve. And then we came back to rowing with Paul's experience on the national team. He ended up severely prolapsing 2 lumbar discs and had to retire quite early. And it seemed to us that rowing was a great area to work into, where there wasn't a lot of innovation going on and there wasn't a lot of thought process given to injury or the equipment set up for the athlete. So at that time, I'd come out and was working at the clinic 4 days a week, and then 1 day a week working on some research projects with the company that I eventually became the performance director for. We were quite lucky, I guess, in terms of how everything played out. It's probably not a conventional pathway, but through doing some research and again applying osteopathic thinking to injury problems that we were seeing in rowing, we ended up coming up with a design for a foot plate invention that we patented and then started testing with national teams. And at that time, the British Olympic team had just become the most funded Olympic team in the world. So all proceeds from their lottery system, everyone who gambles, that all goes straight back into elite and grassroots sports. And that's why the British have gone from, I think, 2 medals at the Atlanta Olympics now to always finishing top 3. They were pretty bad at sport before the money came in. And through that, we started to again look more at potentially a full-time career. So for me, I love treating, and even talking to some of my colleagues just now as we were coming in, it's probably the one part that I do miss. It is an amazing gift to come in and speak with people, literally put your hands on someone, and 98% of the time they leave feeling better. There's not many jobs that are going to give you that satisfaction. I'd definitely say in the sports field, almost none. A lot of your interactions will either be negative or people won't care because there's bigger priorities that are out there. But it is immensely exciting to work with elite level athletes and any athlete every day of the week and look at designs that are coming out of your own mind and then suddenly being produced and used on boats that are winning Olympic medals. Again, through a bit of rolling the dice, I guess, we got the opportunity to go and speak with a representative from Nike where we were able to apply the information that we'd done from a research point of view, but also think very quickly on our feet and answer some important performance and sales questions from there, which led to us doing a design for Nike for a rowing shoe. So Nike had never previously been in rowing, and we were able to work with their team in Portland to design a shoe basically to bring into rowing and create a whole new market for those guys. And in the end, we decided that BatLogic could be a thing and could be a full-time career. So after a year and a half of treating and a whirlwind of trips to the States and Europe, doing all these different bits and pieces, I ended up going full-time with BatLogic as a consultant, and then and since then become a performance director of Bat, and then Bond Cycling, which is a company we're working with now. So a bit of a strange pathway, I guess, in terms of maybe what you guys come into the course and start thinking about. And again, all I'd stress is that your pathway will be your own. So we'll tell you our stories, but it's up to you guys to have a think about what you're passionate to do. The main thing is there are heaps of opportunities out there. So a lot of the time you'll hear about, oh, you're just going to come out and work in a clinic and there's not much else out there. And I've certainly had that discussion with a lot of my colleagues who graduated at the same time or just after or just before I did. There's heaps of opportunities out there. You've just got to think a little bit outside the square in terms of how you use your knowledge to get there. So in terms of, I guess, what I do now and how it works, I've actually got this little diagram that we had designed as a thinking process around some of the consulting we do. So BatLogic now, we have a product branch, which is the foot plate and the shoes that I'll speak more about in a moment as well. We've got a consulting branch for athlete consulting, and essentially, again, we're doing the same thing that you do in a clinic in terms of thinking processes. It's just we go and apply them to an elite athlete or a college athlete. So most of our work in that regard is done overseas. We work with the Australian Olympic team pretty closely as well. But we essentially go in, look at an athlete, understand why they're not performing or why they're getting injured, and solve that problem exactly the same as what you guys will be doing every single day. The only unique side, and I think something that's helped a lot in terms of my pathway, has been the linking of other areas into that thinking process. So anytime I go to consult, whether it's on a product or it's for an athlete, I'm trying to include all of these different areas that have been parts of my own life experience or my learning experience, and the university definitely gave me a lot of that. So in terms of the different segments, I guess, your musculoskeletal medicine, sort of traditional osteopathic skill set in terms of anatomy, hands-on skills and understanding biomechanics. IoT, a big term that's sort of thrown around in terms of the Internet of Things now, so especially for sports innovation, digital, the NASA zone, which people like to talk about. So we all want to measure ourselves now and understand how we move as an athlete and how we function as a human being as well. Really important in terms of understanding these different segments that are important in the world now. So especially from a product point of view, but also a treating point of view, being engaged with what's actually happening in the here and now rather than just having your head down in a book is really important. Research, obviously. When I was at university, I didn't enjoy a lot of my master's project and a lot of the subjects that we did around research. And I'm sure if these guys are honest over here, they probably didn't either. But it is a vitally important part. And especially now we start to see the blending of high performance sport with medicine, in that the research proven data around things is vitally important. So please, when it gets really boring, and it will get really boring in those classes, do try and stay awake and concentrate, because you will use that later on. And if you're going to transition out to medical companies or different pursuits which are outside the clinic, that research background will actually be really important as well. Communication, I think for me that was a huge one at university. I look back on my 5 years here, and it was unbelievable in terms of the mates that I made, and the ability to converse with different people, work with great lecturers, and be put in different scenarios where, again, you're in the student clinic and you might be treating someone who can't afford to get treated regularly and has a whole range of different horrible socioeconomic health problems. And then the next day you might be seeing someone who's an athlete, and you'll get that in your osteo job as well. So it's never dull, and you can learn a lot from it as well. Human focused, I think, also another key part from the osteo side. I've met a lot of physiotherapists, physiologists, doctors, surgeons now who've worked with different Olympic teams, and I can guarantee you no one thinks in the way that we think. And I think that's something really important to protect as well. It is changing a little bit as other courses start to change, and thinking models around things like physiotherapy start to get a little bit wider branching as well. But you're given a gift when you come here, and that's in terms of how you think and how we look at problem solving, and be that from an injury point of view at the moment or applied more widely to performance as well. And then experience, obviously. So that's something that you can start to generate already at university. So from my point of view, I think with some of the sporting clubs, there's not always the best opportunities for osteopaths to actually go out there and learn and be an osteopath. I would recommend definitely getting involved. Playing sport yourself is a great way to do it, but being down there and seeing how athletes work, if you're interested in that sort of thing, is important. But just don't get caught up too much in trying to get a job there and thinking that you'll be the osteopath for whoever AFL team or whatever basketball team, unless you've got really clear communication from them. Because for a long time it just won't happen. You'll be a massage therapist for a long time, and it can get very frustrating. But that's not the mould that you guys have to think of yourselves in. So unfortunately for now, obviously physiotherapy has a big stranglehold on a lot of the sports, but yeah, we're working with Nike and NFL and NBA and all different sorts of sports, and we're osteopaths, so you guys can certainly do it as well. And then translation, I also think that's a really important part in all of this sort of little circle, and it's really what ties it together. If you can't communicate well, it doesn't matter how smart you are, you're not going to get your idea across effectively, and people aren't going to want to get around you. So that's a really important part in the clinic as well, but it's certainly something that I think is pretty important to the work we do as well. Being able to translate your great knowledge into formats so other people can understand it from different backgrounds. So for me, if we're going and we're working with a Nike or we're working with Bont, we're in there speaking to designers, we're in there speaking to accountants who are going to say, why are we using this material for the upper of the shoe? It's going to cost too much money. And I have to explain to them from a performance point of view, maybe we can find a balance because we're going to give great payoff. So the ability to translate your different ideas is super important. And my last point, and hopefully I've answered almost by talking through this, is what I'm doing osteopathy. I would say absolutely yes. I haven't studied anything else. I'm an osteopath. I guess my title now says performance director, but when people ask me what my background is, osteopathy is obviously the first thing that I say. So again, from a thinking model point of view, don't just box yourself into this one area of what is osteopathy. Well, for me, osteopathy is all of this stuff. It's quite different than what I read about when I first came into the course. So I guess in terms of sort of direct outcomes and work that we've done, we've just formed a partnership with Bont Cycling, which is an Australian sort of high performance cycling company in Sydney, and we've created the first ever carbon fibre rowing shoe. So in the 8 years or so that we've been working at BatLogic now, and with these guys' help, we've painted 4 products as pure inventions for the sport of rowing, which is something we're pretty proud of. We've collaborated with other companies, so the guy with the sort of biomechanics marked up suit in the top corner there, that's at the VIS here in Melbourne. So we collaborated with an apparel manufacturer to create a biomechanics tracking system for athletes to use. It's very low tech, there aren't sensors or anything in it, it's literally just lines like what you could learn about when you do your masters here and research on machines like the Vicon analysis machine. But again, through looking at the way that the body functions and understanding that there's an existing problem, people want to learn more about the way they move, but also people move on football fields, in gyms, in pools. We came up with a system to really quickly identify some keystone movements and then applied some thinking around that in terms of an app that we developed as well. So going back to that circle again, the digital side of what we can apply to as well. Our shoe plate is the plate at the bottom here. I've brought a shoe and a shoe plate. If anyone is interested, if you don't care, it doesn't matter. But we've got that too, so if you want to come over and have a chat to us, I can explain what that design is. And again, it was pure osteopathic thinking in terms of how we designed it. So the problem that we identified early on was that rowing had a huge incidence of lumbar spine injury, ranking second, then knee injuries, and then rib stress fracture injuries. So all we did is pick apart the anatomy of how do these things happen and why do they happen. Let's try and build some equipment around the mechanical side of stopping that happening and getting an athlete more connected and engaged from the feet up. And again, I'd proudly say I think that it took an osteopath or a couple of osteopaths to think of this, because we're literally affecting the feet, transferring 140, 160 kilos of force through a body, 220 strokes over the course of a 2-kilometre race. And all we're doing is changing the feet, and we've reduced the injury rate in rowing from that. Obviously, highlights working with the Australian team. We've gone through 2 Olympic cycles, London and Rio, and so far our products have been involved in 17 Olympic medals, which again, we're a small Australian company and that's been across 15 nations, so we're pretty excited about that. To things like working at colleges, the photo in there is the NFL room at Notre Dame. They've got an indoor training circuit, so you imagine your MCG is where you play every Sunday. Well, the indoor training track is basically the same size. It's completely temperature controlled and indoors, and obviously you start to see the budgets that these guys are playing with as well. But the same thing again, they've got hundreds of medical staff employed there, but we're brought in to do consulting because they like the way we think. And that's not a me thing again, that's an osteopathy thing, so keep that in mind. Yeah, and finally, as a summary, I'm pretty happy actually we're on the small screen. I've got a pretty embarrassing haircut in the back of that photo somewhere there. well, I don't know, I thought it was good back then, but in terms of what osteopathy, I guess, gave me and what the uni experience gave me, definitely opportunities. So I think over the course of your 5 years, there'll be periods where you get really tired, you get sick of coming to university, it seems like it's too hard, it's a pain in the arse and you just want to graduate. These are probably going to be some of the best years. And even from a mature age student point of view, I think being able to be connected into a group of people who are all interested in different things with a huge staff that are also interested in different things and experts in their fields, you're probably never going to have that opportunity again, or you certainly won't have it come to you as easily as it does here. So every day you can go and ask someone who's good at something you're interested in, how do I get into this? How do I learn more about this? How do I get better at this? So it is a pretty special experience. Confidence, definitely, I think, again, because the main traditional job role is standing in front of someone and explaining them how you're going to make them feel better. Uni for me was definitely a big confidence growing. Again, you're in a big class, you're encouraged to speak up and actually perform in front of your peers as well. That's super important. So I think that's a great benefit to what we do. Work ethic, obviously, if you didn't have that, you wouldn't be here. It's hard work, true, but you get in what you put out as well. So that's something to think about when the times get tough. Mates and a network, again, a lot of the mates I still see and work with as friends, but in particular from a networking point of view, and I mean, if you see any of us who are here today, we're all doing different things. We've all got different interest areas that you guys might say, hey, that's pretty cool, I'd like to get involved in that. Come and talk to us. It's probably one of the most friendly and open professions, certainly, that I've worked with, and that's not the case at all in the sporting world when you get to the elite level. Curiosity. So people will bring up things again that you suddenly think, I am really interested in that, or I don't understand how that works, or importantly as well, I actually disagree with that. Question it and find out more, and you might stimulate more interest from your own passions as well. Passion, obviously, I've said that many times. And then the key part of it all, I think, is that way to think. So that is osteopathy. For me, that's osteopathy. Other people might disagree with it. The hands-on side is incredible, but really the thinking pattern and the ability to solve problems with that process is so important. I think already the sort of two of us have pretty much said the same thing. I think that ability to think and problem solve, I can tell you because I've been in the top sporting institutes, no one else thinks in the way that we're trained to think, and that's a gift, so make the most of it. Thank you.